The municipalities crippled by debt and unable even to pay for water and electricity. That was one of Auditor-General Kimi Makwetu's findings for the 2018-2019 financial year. In most of the 257 municipalities and 21 municipal entities countrywide, there was inaccurate and lackluster revenue collection, unauthorized spending that was irregular, fruitless and wasteful, and a high dependence on grants and assistance from national government. So Auditor-General Kimi Makwetu joins us now to unpack just some of these very worrying outcomes. Mr. Makwetu, thanks very much for your time this morning on the AM report. There was this one line around the most concerning issue being those municipalities that did not even prepare credible financial statements, and that's after paying millions to consultants for assistance and receiving much support from government. Good morning, AG.
Hi, morning, Michelle. Certainly, Michelle, there's a category of municipalities that, as you describe, many of them find it easy to go outside of the institution to seek support from an external service provider. All of us know that the people that they hire are doing this for their own account, which means they've got sufficient skills to help them where they seek help, but they tend to remain the way they are, regardless of the fact that they've drawn in new service providers. But here's the catch in this whole situation. When you invite somebody to come and fix your accounts, like any institution, that person will not succeed for as long as you yourself do not have your house in order. So effectively, what we are saying in this report is that it's not about the undesirability of external service providers, but it's about a firm hand of the council to put its foot down when those resources are being expended that way, because there's absolutely no requisite value that is derived from that expenditure. I think that's the point.
Yeah, I'm just taking a glance at some of the statements you made just yesterday. You were talking about these municipal statements that you were not able to get from certain municipalities, and you're saying the financial statement stories of these municipalities remain untold or they are in fact unreliable. What does this mean for creditors, current creditors and future investors?
Well, if you look at the prescribed regulations for financial reporting, all municipalities across the country, after they have been audited and their accounts have been signed off in November, as we have done in this case, all of them are required, according to the Systems Act, to submit their financial statements and annual reports to council by no later than the 31st of January of every year, which means that those ones that have not been fully audited or have not submitted their accounts are unable to report transparently about all their activities to the council, which means there are so many other people who are affected by that, including creditors, because the cycle of accountability requires all of them to report by 31 January. And you are right. I mean, many of the people who are interested in the finances of that institution are none the wiser for as long as they submitted what they ought to have.
So what's also interesting is that this is for 2018-2019, and so it's pre-COVID-19 numbers that we are looking at, pre-COVID-19 audits that we are looking at. And we know that the finance minister has allocated more money for municipalities to fight the pandemic. We also know that local government is a hotspot when it comes to corruption. I know that you're not in the business of forecasting, but from what you've told us yesterday, from the past 3 years, what's your experience? What are you hoping to not see as we take a look at, once we're out of the COVID-19 storm? What are you hoping not to see will come out of municipal audits?
One of the big things, many of them have already pronounced on it, Michelle, is the reality that ability to collect money to do the things they've budgeted for is shrinking and shrinking by the day. Now, if you look at these accounts, one of the points that we're making is that many of them have not been good in managing their existing resources. This is now a pre-COVID-19 observation, whereby many suppliers never get paid, but also the big bulk suppliers like water boards and ESCOM also never get paid. So if you fast forward to the current period and you allocate those resources which are earmarked for COVID-19 interventions, the chances are that some of them are also going to go towards paying previous debts that they could not meet with monies that were allocated to them. So it's got to be something that is managed very closely, where they get transfers for current period's COVID interventions. There's got to be some stringent control around how those monies are going to be handled. But National Treasury, and I think they will do well to support municipalities to spend whatever they will get from COVID-19 towards the intended projects.
And the hope is always there that we're not going to continue to lose billions of rand, as has been the case over the years, just because of poor decision-making, just because of inefficiencies. I mean, you talk about a lack of service delivery. That's ultimately what it results in. The people who need that money for basic services are not getting those basic services.
Well, in this report where we say, here's a municipality with a staff complement of 40, whenever we go and do the audit work that we do and we ask about the status of certain projects, you sometimes expect in an institution to find people who work with those projects, not just people who are employed in that institution, but people who are employed there but work with those projects. In some of them, we never find people who are located or associated to the projects that are being done. They are often done by outside companies most of the time. And the question that we keep flagging in this report is that the employment cost is growing by the day. The numbers of employment of people increases. However, those people do not, the real substantive staff that they can show for what they do in that municipality, even in the finance department. So you kind of need to have councils that take very strong decisions when they determine what are the minimum competences they need for the municipality, and how are they going to make sure those people are put into productive use. Yeah. Because that's it, employed, and you really never get any associate value from the investment in employment cost. And I think part of the issue here is not so much about the wastage as it comes out of the bank account, but it's also about how closely supervised are some of these disciplines in the municipality. If you've got an engineering department that's there to do proactive engineering maintenance, does it happen? Or is it allowed to carry on to the extent that the guys in engineering start allocating tenders to their own companies, among others?
AG, I mean, is it not easy enough to track down where the wasteful and fruitless expenditure is coming from and to hold those people to account? Is there someone who is signing the document that show, and you know, when you track where that document has gone, where that money in that document has gone, is it that easy when it comes to accountability?
It ought to be, Michelle, you're quite right. That's how all of us understand the logic of it, you know, to the extent that when we arrive there carrying exactly the same kind of instructions that we are talking about as auditors, then we end up finding it hard to even locate the contract against which the multiple payments are being made. Now, at a point as an auditor, you're not really going to arrive at a conclusion that this particular contract was thrown away deliberately. You can't do that. All you have to do is just to flag the matter, report it to those that are charged with governance, so that they can themselves institute an investigation towards what is exactly. Now they don't do that, and if they don't do it, you do not have the authority as an external auditor to do it yourself.
It's just bizarre, AG, because you'd think if I was in charge of governance, the least I could do is give you a paper trail.
Yeah, look, these things, some of them, they are simple, but some of them can be more sophisticated. How does it happen with big listed entities that have got so many supervisory structures to also fall foul of things like those, you know? And I guess the issue here is that when there are people entrusted with other people's affairs, we should not take it lightly and think that they will always do the right thing. I think the principles of transparency and accountability must always be the arsenal of tools in the hands of those that are charged with oversight. Because over time, people change their mind. They come into an institution with all the glorious ideas about what to do to achieve the objectives. But once they are there, and suddenly something else changes. They are no longer the same people that were going to hold the ethical line. But you need to constantly have people at council who will preach that line, because they are there for the superintendence of the institution, and people who are there to exercise superintendence must make sure that the strong pillars of administration are in place. Part of those are skilled people who have got the necessary competencies, but at the same time, management and the leadership team that is proactive and alert to that. So those are some of the things that in many of these institutions, and you could see that the institutional design of how things ought to work was meant to be supported by those elements of foundation. But when they are not there, and someone else in leadership can't even recognize that they are needed or they are not there, then we are in trouble.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking just because it's the people who live in those places that are the worst affected. AG, thanks as always for your time, for joining us here on the AM Report.